much for coming tonight for the meetup of call for Sydney Web3 developers and entrepreneurs. And we come up with ideas with Peter. We have a few chats since March and April. We've been talking about we should have a sort of event to gather more entrepreneurs and developers together, and we can share them of all the updates of all the funding resource, all the mentor resource, or the development resource the community can provide through. So that's why we set up for tonight. And and also thanks for the help from Sam, Clem, Daniel, Patricia, and Paul. And we have the wonderful team tonight to share you the updates for each of the community. To start with, I would like to take 10 minutes to share about Sydney Web3, the community. So we are a community built up since 2013. So with the 99 meetups, including the depth workshops, business case studies, and the smart contract development, auditing, DeFi, NFT, GameFi project demonstration, and token economics. We keep increasing our members. So right now we have 1,800 members on our meetup groups. And we also very honored and glad to have so many institutions, research, and enterprise join us and share their updates in our previous meetups. So we have Cyrus, Data61, Deloitte, Hyper Argument, Westpac, Finance Australia, and Matchsport coming on board during our previous meetups. So they share us about the blockchain research, the transformation case studies, and also the legal in crypto world, as long as the trend of open banking and the checklist of investment. So I shouldn't call it name like a Web3 entrepreneurs, because some of them they are already becoming like a unicorn. So we have Immutable X, Near Protocol, Cover Finance, Alpha Wallet, Dodo Protocol, and Blueprint coming into our product roadshow to share with our entrepreneurs what they have been done during their journey. And also, they also coming on board to share with their hackathon and bonding opportunities, and also have some team recruitment, and like every few months or maybe every few weeks, we have quite a lot of features improvements during all the products. Then they also share through us from our own sign-up online events. So maybe some of them people coming tonight know for my background is developers. I've been doing developers since 2008, so last 14 years. For my ambitions, for my goals, always want to build out a community for the developers. And we also make some of the stuff in the real life. So Daniel have in 2018, we set up a series of 6 meetups talking about the blockchain development workshops, talking about the ERC 721, talking about how to build crypto zombies, and people can get their hands dirty to do some programming, do some code. And in some more details in our community, you can learn about the Web3.js, you can learn about the React.js, and more fundamentally, you can learn some of the smart contracts. So as we know, in Ethereum and some of the EVM compatible chains, you can use in Solidity, and in Solana and Polkadot, you can use the Rust, and like I think Haueiss is quite amazing because they have a one single chain, but they have a multiple language to support it. So you can learn Python here and rich programming. So I will quickly just introduce what we built before. So basically, some of the mobile application, decentralized application with the functionality like layer 2, also the NFT minting factories, and also like buy now pay later in the crypto world. So most of them, they are already in the MVP prototype setting up, and some of them already released on Apple Store and Google Play, so you can try to download it. But for most of our projects, we don't have that much plan for in the token way, because we more enjoy about building out a Web3 decentralized application rather than making some financial outcome after that. And some of them, we also attend some of the hackathons, like the DAC trade. We've been joining the Solana hackathon last year, and we won the honorable mentions on 2021. And the AFK DAO, which is a bridge connecting with the gamers, developers, and also the NFT owners. They are going to have their IDO, I think, will be just like tomorrow. So if you guys are interested in any a gamified Metaverse connection project, you can have a check about it. So we've been discussing, talking through the project we've been doing during last 2-3 years, and yeah, of course, we are also helping the project have their smart contract auditing, because it's quite essential. So some of the project, they will lose millions of more than that of their assets because of some security leaking. And we are not only checking through the code standard, we also helping them to optimize their gas fee. So we consider through how they can optimize the usage in one of the transactions to helping the project to achieve their goal. All right, so I think before I move into the next page, I just want to ask for all of our audience, how many of us are blockchain developers? How many of us are doing programming? All right, that's not that many, but that's okay. But how many of us really keen to learn some of the blockchain technologies, how to build out a DeFi protocol, or maybe learn something like layer 2, learn something like Solana? What's the ecosystem different to Ethereum? How many of us? Okay, that's much more. Okay, so I have a little bit more passion to continue through, otherwise. Okay, so upcoming. First I forgot to thank for the venue supporter. So we have a Haymarket HQ who can sponsor us, so we can see it's up there in the back. So thanks for the venue supporting. So we can have a nice event, and we also can have our upcoming workshops. We want to talk about quite a lot of tech stuff, how to build your ERC20, how to build your own NFT, and how probably you can practice in crypto zombie to build your own gamified apps, and also learn the Solana programming, because that's quite on the trend. So I can still remember in 2018 and 2019, we spent quite a lot of time doing other chains discovery. We also studied quite a lot on Solana, and during the time, the Solana coins, I think it's around $1 or $2, right? So I think as a developer, one of the advantages you can learn a lot of like different programming, but the other one you can also discover some of the projects like earlier than other people. So yeah, like from $1, I think on the peak they've been to about 200 or something. But if you've been a developer, you will have the incentive to capture the good projects. So yeah, this is some of the general plans, and this is the diagrams coming from Tom Paretos, talking about all the ecosystems in Australia. Why I'm showing out this one is like as an individual or maybe as one community, we are far away to build other things by ourselves. So we can collaborate with some of them on the map together to distribute the workshops together, we believe. So another thing inspiring me all the time is like some of the educations, like what they are doing, because we like Web3 is not like only the root class. Like we also can see quite a lot of university, like Stanford University, they promote a lot of course during last few years. So we can see the CS251 NFT Autumn 2021. The course, they actually have quite a few programming courses, including Ethereum, DEX, and also the SNAC, to teaching their students, like firstly, the fundamental knowledge, secondly, like the programming on the crypto world. So after that, they also issue their NFT. So they have a 9.99 Ethereum was on the OpenSea. So once you cover through all the courses, like your NFT actually is valuable. So I think this is a very good chance. So like personally I'm doing my PhD, so I also found all my peers, all my classmates, they're getting some struggling about the motivation during the learning. So once they pass one of the course, once they pass one of the subjects, other than they can publish the paper, they can show it out to the public, they don't get any access after that. That's why I also have such motivation to turning the knowledge accumulation into something like valuable. So we can see quite a lot of other products already start with the learn to earn or like play to earn. So we can see like Minecraft, like Roblox, like Axie Infinities. They already involve quite a lot of like procedure. Like people can play, people can getting some of the equipment inside the games, and they can also resell the game in the marketplace. But for me, like I'm also a game player, but after playing games, I'm still feeling like not much things accumulating to myself. So that's why I'm always thinking why we can't bring the education, bring the learning into the NFT. Since we've been organizing the meetups and workshops like since 2017, and we also met quite a few good speakers and Web3 developers and some of the senior maybe token economy researchers. I believe some of us will join us to distribute the knowledge and their previous experience to the community. So in our idea concept, people will teach the Web3 technology, and also the learners, once they attend the course, once they pass the quiz, they can get NFT at the end. And who can participate? Not only the educators, not only the creators. So the educator will be the one who can decide the curriculum, but the creator will be the one who publishes things to the platform. And also the distributors, like the promoters, they will more than welcome to join the platform to help us to distribute the essential knowledge to the whole community. So I also think about the way from the system end. So I don't think like from the system we need anything like assessor, because like the smart contract or the IT, if we put the algorithm into there, we can turn it as the outcome. But for the human being, I think there are all the things we can think of. So the educators, creators, promoters, and of course the learners. So hopefully this could be a self-sustainable systems. And I just want to propose these things as like a little bit ideas is coming from our community for a while, but I think tonight is also the first time we are sharing to more of the crowd and to see, and people always want to hear your suggestions, your advice, or maybe your challenge about like why the learn-to-earn will work or why the learn-to-earn won't work. Okay, all right, thanks. So I think that's pretty much what I want to cover tonight, and because we have a next 1.5 hours with Peter Xing, with Sam Zhou, with Daniel Ba, Patricia, and Patricia to share us their updates from their communities. And before I stop, I just want to make sure like we will have another 40 minutes to 50 minutes. Like our speakers will introduce their communities, and after that, probably we can take another 10 minutes break, and we will have the panel discussions. And everyone more than welcome to ask any questions if you have. Yeah. So far, anyone have any questions or anything you want to confirm? No? All right, thanks. So I will pass to Peter.
Thanks, Vince. And thanks again for organising this session as well. It's such a pleasure to be part of the community, with the awesome crowd as well. So it feels like a super meetup, and we're actually working together with the KPMG folks, High Grade Ventures. So I'm the Digital Data Solutions Lead at KPMG, leading our KPMG Metaverse initiatives. And I'm also the co-founder of Transhumanism Australia. So if you want to check out our website, transhumanism.com.au. We're a community of technologists that want to use science and technology to enhance the human condition. So I guess put your hands up if you like to live longer and healthier, right, in life. Yes. And put your hands up if you want to be smarter. Imagine, integrating with computers one day. Yeah, one guy wants to be smarter and integrate with computers. And you might have seen, things like Elon Musk wanting to connect us to the cloud through brain-computer interfaces. But in the meantime, as you can see from what Nick had illustrated, these Web3 protocols are, a way to get there further, to connect us better globally, to automate some of the things so that we can focus on the things that matter. So that's the sort of mantra behind transhumanism. How do we use these technologies to make us smarter, and also make sure that no one's left behind? And the whole Web3 ethos is that it is a public good. Is that something that all humanity can collaborate on? And this is something that we want to make sure that we bring along humanity who is super well-being. So these are the three mantras of transhumanism. In terms of what we do, we have a meetup with Transhumanism Sydney. We're getting back into gear, having physical meetups again. The investments we talk about, these are the things we educate our communities on, is how to invest and accelerate the future around those three pillars. So in terms of super longevity, you have things like technologies around CRISPR gene editing, and there are companies that are publicly available right now that you can invest in biotech, whether it's Intellia, CRISPR, Editas. These are the companies that are building the future so that we could correct genetic diseases, really reading the whole genome, but also then editing the whole genome to find ways to cure those genetic diseases. And there's also things that they can offer to the community, so $100 whole genome sequencing kits that you can get as a subscription service now. We've all heard of some of these, vaccine companies like Moderna and Pfizer. They're using the technology behind the COVID vaccines, mRNA, to start treating things signals to our cells to treat these cellular diseases. And these are the sort of things we want to fund and accelerate. On the intelligence, it's looking at how do we accelerate superintelligence, so accelerate AI. Tesla's probably the sort of groundbreaking AI company out there with the robotics on cars, the sentient machines on wheels. And in terms of Google's DeepMind, right, we got Matt over here, they're working on Google. How do we accelerate some of that for good? OpenAI from Microsoft now really is meant to be open source, but we acquired, I guess, in a sense. And you got Baidu in China, a few other players in there. And also in terms of super well-being, how do we accelerate these platforms and products to, say, enable people to use these technologies, make smartphones readily available all around the world, have them connect to a satellite connection with SpaceX, all those sort of well-being sides, and also be able to connect to AR, VR devices that you can get more engagement no matter where you live around the world. And so these are the sort of things that are providing that super well-being. And it's really looking at things like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How do we use technologies to meet our basic needs, whether it's food, water, shelter, our safety needs, universal basic income, and these are sort of things we looked at as a community. And we've been running this community since late 2014, and it's been a non-profit. It's been something that we got volunteers involved with. We thought, how do we get that more engagement using Web3? And that's where Transhuman Coin came along. So Transhuman Coin is a community token. It is on the BNB chain. So think about the mimic nature of things like Shiba Inu and those sort of coins that really have a community built around. But we wanted to use these as a technology, a tool for good to accelerate these investments. So the community itself has got 2 million people that identify as transhumanists all around the world, and these are people that are really passionate about science and technology that want to use it for good. And our reflection mechanism essentially allows us to fund these projects. So 2% of every transaction goes to existing holders. And one of the fund accounts that we have essentially runs the ability for us to start investing in these projects. So if you want to check out Transhuman Coin, go to transhumancoin.finance. We have over 14,000 holders so far. Our largest holders are actually in Africa because they are crypto first. My co-founder is in Joburg in South Africa, and they essentially built this out. We've actually just created a P2P exchange called valid.finance. It's available on the App Store, on Apple and Google, and allows our Transhuman Coin holders to trade between themselves along with other crypto tokens. And so the tokenomics behind that is that 2% also goes to a liquidity pool. So it's an automated market making on BNB, PancakeSwap. We also partner with Swift Blockchain. So Swift Blockchain is something that you can trade over 250 different tokens on the exchange. These are some of our team members. You can see Elise from Bitfwd as well. She's also my partner in life. We've got our developer Bo coming in later tonight as well, and Jonathan Woods from CBA. He's been looking at it from a risk side. So we've been around since August of last year, and we've built up quite a community, and it's all about the adoption. So if you think that science and technology could be used for good, and you want to explore some of these technologies and invest in them, Transhuman Coin is something we're really keen to get you part of. So, is that cool? Okay.
Right, thanks, teacher. So yeah, we can see quite a lot of data involved, right? So there's also from your specialty. Thanks.
And we're partnering up with our colleagues in Lithium.io, who just did their IDO. They're building on the Elrond platform, and it's a way for you to share in a private and secure way your health data. So things like things on your Apple Fitbit or so Apple Health and Fitbit devices, you'll be able to actually monetize that data through end users, which might be the pharma companies, where you could share your genetic data. And this is something we're working with the South African Medical Research Council at the moment, and so they're looking to help their clinical patients, monetize their genome data. So it's a shared economy. The patients monetize it. The South African Medical Research Council can monetize that data, and it offsets the cost of hosting, this genetic data that runs terabytes in size. So yeah, really just trying to accelerate all of that data sharing and privacy of that partnership.
Great, thanks, Peter. So if you have any question, probably we'll lead to the panel discussion. Thanks. All right, so next we will have Sam Joe on GiveTree. I just checked through the website today. I'm getting very immersed about all the YouTubes, all the videos already been set up in the Metaverse. So yeah, thanks Sam. So I will leave to you. Okay.
Oh, not to mention we're hiring as well. You guys have some fancy employee together, yeah.
Hello, I'm Sam. So I'm going to try and focus more on the business and the product tonight and less on my own story, because I think that the product is getting to a point where it actually stands on its own 2 feet. So GiveTree, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is launch 3 products. We're launching the first product in July. So the first product is an NFT launchpad. So what the NFT Launchpad will enable anyone to do is mint a collection of NFTs to the Ethereum blockchain in July. And the unique thing about GiveTree is that a percentage of that transaction fee will actually go to the nominated charity. So the person or persons who are setting up the items for mint can select the charity from our partner list of charities, and they can select the percentage, and then that percentage goes straight to the charity. So in this way, what we're trying to do is use Web3 technology to become a new fundraising mechanism for charity, and at the same time help creators to earn an income for themselves. So if you can imagine, today we spoke with 2 charities, and within their network of existing donors, they've got photographers and artists and all this sort of thing. And traditionally today, those artists and photographers have just been giving their creations to the charity to help fundraise. But now, actually, those same exact artists and photographers and creators can actually sell their photography and their art on GiveTree as an NFT, and ensure that a percentage of that will actually now become transparent, accountable, on the blockchain, fundraise for the charity that they're trying to support. So we're going to launch on the Ethereum blockchain. About 2 weeks later, we're launching the Solana blockchain. A few weeks after that, the Polygon, and a few weeks after that, CeLo, and then Flow. We'll be launching more and more smart contracts. If you'd like to produce a collection on GiveTree, we will actually create you a custom-built smart contract, your collection based on your requirement. So more and more and more, we will have more options for you on GiveTree. After the marketplace, we will launch the game, which we've been building in parallel. We have a team of engineers. I've got 2 co-founders who are engineers across Web 2 and Web 3, and then I've got a third co-founder coming in on the game side, and we've decided to switch to Unity from Unreal Engine because it's got more Web3 application and advantages than Unreal Engine at the moment. Unreal Engine's quite far away, whereas Unity is good to go now. And yeah, we'd like to start fundraising for charities now, not later. So in that way, there's opportunities to start bringing to life some of the charity assets. So for example, I was up in the Daintree rainforest, the world's oldest rainforest, 2.5 weeks ago, with our charity partner Halfcut, and their charity partner Rainforest 4, and they've got a partnership called Stronger Together. And we went up there with a whole bunch of brands that they're working with, like Australia Bank and Ben & Jerry's, MacPact, and all these sorts of groups. And now what we're doing is we're helping Half Cut and Rainforest 4 and all of these different brands come together and do some really cool Web3 fundraising on GiveTree. And that will also kick off in July. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, I'm more than happy to have a chat afterwards. There's tons of videos and stuff here, and I'm sure hopefully you get some value out of that.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Sam. So I believe, I've heard quite a lot of people adapt to blockchain technology, but for the charity and for helping people in Africa, I think will be comparing with others will be very good practice. And I think we want to see more development in the future on GiveTree. Thanks.
Thanks.
There's tea and biscuits at the back. You can indulge yourself in the meantime. Wow, in Wales, I guess it's all the Wales' fault, right? That's what I heard with USP and stuff.
Is that there? Everybody. Thank you.
By the way, the coordination group for this event on LinkedIn, we called it Sydney Web3 Boomers. So, bringing back the kind of bling bling to the boomer vibes. Oh, I didn't send the slides. Okay, that's going to be challenging. Okay, there's no slides. Maybe just load it before .com website. Okay, so that will make my presentation shorter, which is not a bad idea. Thanks everyone for coming and for Nick for organizing. So I guess maybe as a back story, I've been working in blockchain since 2016, more or less. We've been organizing hackathons, which I see like a lot of people just mingling in the crowd here already saying hackathons. There's currently a hackathon that we'll hear about shortly from Paul. We also run a hedge fund, and this hedge fund is split 50% across liquid assets. I think it's okay. Yin Yang is good vibes. So it's split 50% across liquid assets, which is, you can take your Bitcoin and your Ethereum and your DOTs or other assets, and then you can do all kind of strategies with it and yield something like 10 or 20 or whatever %, and hopefully accumulate crypto while it goes in volatility, and we see how now we're entering a market where people are becoming skeptic. That's the best time to basically keep accumulating ETH or Bitcoin or other assets that you deem as blue chip assets or core assets in our fund. And we also do infrastructure provisioning. So we run about 6% of the Aleph network. It's a decentralized cloud computing. You can do storage or compute. So a lot of the indexing on Solana applications today is using Aleph network. So for the liquid asset part, we're basically focused on this kind of things that are either blue chip assets and then how to yield strategies on them, or infrastructure provisioning that is then kind of like akin to mining, except for other layers of the decentralization stack. And then in parallel to that, we also do venture building. So venture building is, we find interesting entrepreneurs that usually come out of the hackathons or come out of different communities that we're collaborating with, like Xing community, the Sydney Web3. And ambitious people want to build great stuff, and we basically partner with them, help incubate them. Sometimes it turns out, you launch the canoe into the water and it's amazing, and it's like kind of really going well and it's becoming a cruise ship. And sometimes you launch the canoe and it turns out that like they didn't see the iceberg and it goes through the Titanic. That's kind of like how it is to accelerate ventures, I suppose. And we kind of came originally from that grassroots movement of open source and crypto, and that's where we used to run the hackathons through the fund. And at some point late last year, we decided to kind of separate between it and start the initiative that is purely public good called Blockathon. And the Blockathon is being established these days with the second cohort currently running Metaverse Blockathon. You'll hear about it shortly from Paul. And yeah, that would be it for me. Thank you.
So I think that Daniel is the one being together with me or maybe some of the Web3 friends during the last 4 or 5 years. So we've been experiencing the bull market, bear market, crab market. But the most important, we are still here today. All right. And Mark. All right, thanks. And we will move to Paul.
Okay, we finally worked it out. Thanks everyone. So my name is Paul, and I am a core contributor, well, Daniel, who's also a core contributor for Blockathon Dao. Blockathon Dao is a public good learn-to-earn entrepreneurship education initiative. We work with builders, innovators, designers, developers, and interface them with world-class entrepreneurs and experts from across the blockchain industry to help them facilitate their ideas and build a project of the future. So before I go into absolute depth of Blockathon Dao, I'd like to first establish what a public good is or what public goods are. So I'd like to ask a question for the audience. What is public good? Is anyone willing to answer that question? No? Like, it could be like 2 words. Yes? Yeah?
Oh, sorry, I was just about to read non-excludability.
Oh, no, that's for me. That's not for
Oh,
me. I should have left it on there. So, alright, well, oh, yes.
Is non-excluded like non-rival?
You can't, you're taking the words out of my mouth.
I thought you asked us.
I did. Okay, this is my bad.
Helping people that need help.
Sure. Well, I guess I need to explain that, right? So, anyway, so actual by definition, public good is 1, non-excludable, which means that anyone should have access to the same public good in an equal and fair way. Okay? And then the second definition is non-bribery, meaning if you were to use the public good, your usage of the public good does not take away someone else's access in any way. Right? So a public good by definition actually goes across many things, like air, for example, is a public good. Mother Nature gives you the air, right? You breathe it, and you hope that your neighbor can also take the air, right? Now, when you think about non-rivalry with air, as an example, you know, the idea is that your usage of the air does not affect someone else's usage of the air. But people, use the air, they use their car to exhaust into the air, which actually affects the person next to you and their usage of the air. So air is technically a public good, but we are kind of starting to challenge the non-rivalry condition, right? There's other forms of public goods like social welfare, right? We've got free education, tertiary education, we've got basic utilities, right? We've got roads, we've got free Wi-Fi, blah, 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 radio, right? All public goods. And also free open source software is also a public good. We'll get into that a bit later. A key distinction to make is that, when we have a public good, who provides it, who funds it? So for air, Mother Nature provides it, which is kind. For most of the other public goods like radio or for like roads or like free tertiaries, taxpayer that pays for it. So even though everyone gets access to it, equal access, and the day someone else is paying for it, either nature or the government or whoever. Very key point to make. Now, relevant to this conversation is the public good of free open source software. Right, so the idea is that you have developers who provide the software. Anyone can copy the software, they can fork the software for their own usage. And the idea is for the software, anyone can copy the software for their own use, and by you copying the software, you don't take away the right of anyone else using the software as well. So it meets the 2 definitions before of non-excludability, non-rivalry. Now, the thing is that FOSS, free open source software public good, has a bit of an issue with funding, the funding dilemma. If someone or a group of people are going to spend energy and time, tons of people are going to spend energy and time building this code for your use, why should they do that? Okay? And you might argue, well, alright, because they like doing it. Well, I'm sorry to say, we can't get any altruism solely in our world. Like, people need to eat, people need to get paid to get their lives right. So it's basically kind of maybe 2 ways to fund public goods. And there's one, you have private companies who build their own private products for their users, and they have an incentive to use the open source software and then build their private products on top of the open source software for their users. So you have closed source software they build on top of open source software to build products that they can mine off of. And so what they do, in order to facilitate their build of their products, they then actually pay their developers to contribute to the open source software, which contributes to that code base. Okay? So this is kind of like an indirect way, this is actually a direct way to fund open source software, but the only open source software that's going to be funded is the software that's going to basically benefit the private company relevant to their products. It's going to be very specific. So as an example, you've got Google, who actually have Chromium as an open source code base for like Chrome-based browsers or for Android, right? It's all open source, where they build, the Android OS on top or whatever. You have like Facebook, they actually have built out a lot of the code base for React. Haueiss, so they've contributed a lot there because they use it so much for their Facebook app. You've got Apple that's built upon free PTSD. So there's many examples of private companies actually contributing to open source software that actually leads into facilitating their proximate build for their users. So this is one way to fund public goods. The other way is basically just grant money. So basically, people were able to accumulate money that they provide grants for with no real direct expectation or obligation to get money back. Right. So for example, Ethereum Foundation has raised money from the holdings of Ethereum, and then they use distribution of Ethereum every year to fund developers to focus on coders kind of benefit the Ethereum community. We have another example. We have Kraken as in the exchange. They've created a developer grant where they fund Bitcoin developers to basically contribute to open source software on Bitcoin. So this is basically the two ways to contribute to open source funding and to provide funding for public goods. That I think they should hire me. Sorry, Isabel, I'm taking your job. That's fine. Yeah, no, I'll do it for free. Public goods. So with Blockathon Dao, like I said at the beginning, we're all about providing public goods to the blockchain ecosystem. So what is our way of being able to contribute to open source software in the blockchain industry with the various blockchains that exist and the various projects that contribute to these ecosystems? So there's basically two ways. One, we run blockathons, blockchain hackathon, right? We have multiple cohorts. So the idea is we enlist hackers and get them on board. We get sponsorships and partnerships of different projects, of different ecosystems and blockchains in the industry. And basically we run like a mostly online event where the hackers have a chance to interface with these experts, build out their ideas, build teams, and then obviously a pitch at the end to win prizes. And then if things go really well and they want to continue with their idea, then we facilitate the process of them actually further building out their idea, ideating, and even potentially leading on to like a pre-seed or something like that. So basically the idea is we want to facilitate people and encourage them and empower them to think of their ideas and actually build it out in a short pace of time and give them the confidence to continue on if they really like the ideas that they have. So with this process, technically they're building, we're facilitating this kind of environment, and we get to pay them if they win a prize. So basically, they're basically getting paid to learn, right, while working world-class entrepreneurs. Like they're getting paid to do that. Right? It's absolutely fantastic. Right? And they're going to build projects that contribute to open source software. So the other way in which we contribute and provide public goods is by a bounty platform that we're currently producing at the moment. So we're working with projects and projects on blockchains that we're partnered with who are working with us with the blockathons. These projects also have pieces of work that need to be done. It could either be pieces of work or articles that need to be, it could be code that need to be developed, or articles to be written, or UX to be designed, or art to be created, and they can basically describe that piece of work that needs to be done, put a number figure on it for remuneration for the person that does that piece of work, and then actually place it on our bounty platform. So basically, hackers, while through the blockathon or in between the blockathons, if they want to earn some extra cash, can go on our bounty platform, and like you have remembered this entire presentation, and they can go on and earn money. So once again, learn to earn. They can do a piece of work, they can learn and go through the process of development, and also get paid for it as well. So our entire ethos of Blockathon Dao is for people to be able to want to upskill themselves and get paid while doing it, and we accelerate their process and their career by interfacing them with top tier talent, world-class entrepreneurs across the entire industry without connections and network. So that's Blockathon Dao, that's what we do. We are currently actually conducting a Metaverse Blockathon at the moment with a partner based out of Paris who are running a conference called the Metaverse Summit in mid-July. We're working very closely with them, and our current cohort launched last week. We've got over 15 teams currently hacking at the moment, and more teams are onboarding every day. And we're super excited to see what ideas they're pitched for at the end. So that Blockathon goes for a month. Started May 9th, ended June 8th. If you want to know more, you want to see the results, you want to be a part of the community, you can jump on our Twitter, Blockathon_Dao on Twitter. Our Discord link is in the description. Go into the community, all the activities there. We've got team channels where they're talking publicly about their ideas. If you want to see or have a look at what they're working on, you can just go straight to Discord and have a look. So, one thing I just want to really hone down, and I think it's really important for communities to really explicitly describe the values that they uphold, because values is what long-term keeps the community together, right, and keeps people together and building. So one of the things we really value is, of course, diversity, in such that we understand that people come from different backgrounds, from different talents and skill sets, and it's very important to be empathetic with people with different circumstances and to provide extra facilitation as accordance with their ambition if they want to participate in any way. So really keep an eye on that. I think it's really important to have empathy. Of course, centralization is the core tenet of this entire industry, and we want to uphold that. Social impact, clearly with the projects that we hope to facilitate, we want them to actually provide positive impact to society. Empowerment, we want to be able to provide confidence and stability for people who have high ambition but might not otherwise execute, to help them actually execute on their ideas and facilitate the initial process that they go through. And align incentives, meaning when people are talented and ambitious and want to work on something, we want to actually properly incentivize them either financially or otherwise with what they want to do, right? It's so much the case that maybe someone is a bit more unexperienced and maybe not be able to align themselves typically properly and have all the ambition but quite not work out and be where they need to be or be where they want to be in the future. So it's very important to have aligned incentives. We want to ensure that our cohorts that we have get what they actually get out of it. So another thing to add is cohorts that we run. So we ran one Blockathon, our Genesis Blockathon right here in March, which went really well. We're currently running our second Blockathon, Metaverse Blockathon currently, and we are looking to run continual Blockathons in the future. So it looks like the next Blockathon is going to be in September. So yeah, if you're interested in any way, shape or form, or have any friends who might be interested in hacking ideas, we're all about facilitating. So look, if you've got a friend that's super keen on a particular idea, and they're keeping hammering you about it, and it's annoying you, just rather than like tolerate it, just go to the Blockathon Dao guys and they'll sort it out, and then get out of your hair. So see that public good. That'd be everything. I guess we leave the questions for the panel, right? Any questions?
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thank you.
So DAO is the best place. Also, you can meet people. You can also collaborate with other ideas together. So that's where I also met Patricia, like 2 months ago. So right. So now, let's go straight away to the Metaverse Sydney. So let's see the updates from Patricia.
Maybe the meantime I'll get started with this way. Thank you so much for showing up today. I saw a couple of people already at the NFT Sydney, a couple at the Metaverse Sydney event. It's a great close-knit community here, so thanks everyone for making it tonight. Just a little bit about myself. I got into the space in let's say 2013. When I was wearing the Google glasses for the first time, I was like, fuck yes, it's gonna be amazing, right? All these like virtual things that you're gonna see, and Google Maps in front of your eyes and stuff. But obviously, technology takes a little bit of time until this comes alive. So in the meantime, what I've done was like I analyzed the VR ecosystem market here in Australia, and I've also looked closely in terms of what the NFT market and what's happened pretty much. And I found out that there's actually quite a lot of projects out there that are failing, even though they have a really good artist, or even though they had a really amazing team. So what I created is a NFT marketing canvas, really helping to increase the likelihood of projects to succeed. Because really the project, in terms of creating a project, an NFT project specifically, is literally 10% probably about creating the artwork, but 90% about how to market it, how you're promoting it, and creating your team, etc. So, and because I've created those kind of content pieces, I would say, some brands are actually getting in touch from like TV and film studios and so on, and wanting to get a metaverse strategy and how can they get into that space. So first of all, we'd love to understand from you guys who has played or engaged in the metaverse, who has played, for example, the Sandbox or Decentraland. So a couple of people. But for those of one who don't know what the metaverse is, so for now there's actually no real definition out there. It is really made up, but what it often has in common is that it has some aspects and components of augmented reality, virtual reality, online gaming, and NFTs, social media, and different kinds of technologies really. But what differentiates other experiences from the metaverse is really that it feels you're truly immersed. So instead of just like looking at something on your phone, it feels like you're in the experience, right? It's around you, it feels spatial. And so I love the idea of what the future can bring, because for me, I believe that we truly will spend quite some time in terms of how we work, how we play and socialize in those spatial experiences. So for those of you who are keen to understand more about it and to connect and get a little bit educated in that space, feel free to join us on our Metaverse Sydney meetups. We are trying to get it every month up and running. We've got already some great support that we are probably also are trying to create the Metaverse Sydney conference as in the largest in real life Metaverse conference. And we're also still looking here for some volunteers who want to get into the space, or some people who are keen to create something to really share our knowledge, share our space, and also to create a great hub for like Sydney and this kind of technology. So for everyone who is keen to connect and to hear more about it, feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much.
Hello, you can hear me okay, right? Alright, so we have our last speaker. So it's quite question, so I just mentioned today because we invite me to Immutable meetup, I think 6 months ago, right, in Broken Center.
Yes.
Yes. So, but for me, because I didn't attend that time, so I also want to hear more about what Immutable is kind of doing, and like any updates from Immutable X, and like anything Clem want to share with us. Thanks.
Alright, hey guys, my name's Clem, and as Nick mentioned, it was an impromptu invite onto the panel today, so I have no slides for you. So this is also going to be an impromptu session happening today. So thanks everyone who was on the original panel for sharing some really cool ideas and concepts, and you should definitely check them out. So I was at Immutable up until about 3 weeks ago, and now I'm like kind of traveling and going to different blockchain conferences around the world to kind of see what the crypto space looks like globally. But just a hands up of here who has heard of Immutable. Awesome. And you want to keep your hands up and put your, I guess no one has their hands up, but that's right. Cool, so I just want to gauge like how much you know about Immutable. Like, is it just you've heard it on LinkedIn, or you kind of know the technology, what we're trying to do, what the mission is? Like, between those two, okay, cool. So we'll start from the beginning. So Immutable, essentially it started off as a game studio where we built like Gods Unchained, and it's like one of the first blockchain games that ever came out. And through that experience, the co-founders realized that, hey, it was really expensive to build a Web3 game on layer 1. So as part of that, they then had the idea to build like a scaling solution, layer 2 scaling solution on top of Ethereum, which ended up being the Immutable X protocol. And we used Zcash proofs on top of Ethereum to essentially reduce the gas fees for our users, so that it made Web3 gaming, NFT projects more feasible. And this came quite in handy last year when there was the NFT boom, and we saw that we went from one project, Gods Unchained, which was using Immutable X, to about like over a couple hundred on Immutable X now. So yeah, and essentially now the main difference is there are a lot of layer 2 scaling solutions out there now. You know, Immutable X is not the only one. So the company's moving more towards liquidity of NFTs, right? So we're all familiar with ERC20 tokens and like Dogecoin and stuff like that, and how fungible assets are just more liquid in general. But with the trouble with NFTs though, is that because of its unique nature, it's way less liquid, right? Because to find buyers for that particular unique asset, okay, cool, yeah. To find buyers or sellers for unique assets, it's a lot more difficult. So that's where the company's transition into now to focus on how can we improve the liquidity of NFTs, especially in gaming, which is where Immutable's background is in, so that players, as part of these metaverses, can trade more freely, buying and selling those assets. So that's kind of what we're focused on at the moment. Yeah, so I don't really have too much time for this at all. So maybe if you're okay with it, Nick, we can kick off the Q&A session early. And if you have any questions for me, we can start there.
I was just curious on the Immutable X. You mentioned you have your own scaling solution, but I've also had a bunch of downloads some relationship with Blueprint, and I'm a bit confused about what it actually is.
Yeah. So the whole Blueprint drama thing.
Drama was
well, let's just keep it there. Can't say much else on that one. But yeah, Blueprint is a completely separate solution. It just so happens that we were both interested in the GameStop deal and empowering essentially what they're trying to do. I know that sounds super vague, but like, yeah. So, long story short, two separate solutions. Yeah.
Anyone got any questions?
I had one for GiveTree, but I can't see the button. Is GiveTree still here? I wanted to give.
You want us to do with it through?
Yeah.
things in the toilet.
In regards to Immutable X as well, what's your next big venture going to be?
Well, up until like 3 weeks ago, I would say probably check Twitter for all the public information. Rest is private, which I found. But yeah, I would say like the biggest thing is StarkNet, which is coming. So if you don't know, StarkX is essentially a solution provided by a company called Starkware. And essentially they're taking StarkX technology for layer 2 scaling and decentralizing that. And Immutable is going to be building off Starknet. And Immutable X as a protocol is going to be more decentralized when that happens. And yeah, there's a lot of partnerships which you can check on Twitter. And the whole liquidity thing is going to be huge because I don't think many chains are focusing on the liquidity of the NFT market. So a lot of them right now, as far as what I can see, are just focused on allowing you to trade your NFTs from like a over-the-counter type situation with like some bids and offers, but no one's thinking really about how can we make that easier for the users, to liquidate and trade those assets.
So StarkX, no affiliation with Stark Industries?
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Fair enough.
I have a question for GiveTree. I think it's a good idea, great for the world, great for communities, artists, and charities. The question is, how do you make it into a sustainable business model? Like current charities, they usually, their one is like thank you water, where they don't make a profit, but they are sustainable. And other charities, they rely on grants. How will your platform work if the money goes to charities?
We do a 1% transaction fee that barely covers our costs. So that's not really where our income is going to come from. That's more just like scaling costs. So every transaction on the platforms, on the launchpad, on the marketplace, and in the game is having a required minimum of 1% donation to charity. So every single transaction, the seller of the item, when they're setting the item up for sale, they must select a charity. They are then required to donate 1% of the revenue from that sale of that item. They can set that percentage higher. They can set it to 99% if they want to. GiveTree charged that 1% transaction fee for us, so that's our income from those transactions. That's not a sustainable business model. But when you add up the 1% transaction fee for GiveTree plus the required 1% donation, it's 2%, which is still less than OpenSea's 2.5%. So it is a lower price point, which means that if OpenSea was to try and compete on the feature, they would have to adjust their entire pricing model. Okay, so that's why we've done that. So when it comes to your question about like how do we create a more sustainable business model, what we're really interested in is the gaming side of things. So if there is a successful NFT collection, so one of our partners, for example, is a NFT collection called the Woodies, and they sold out 10,000 NFTs in 30 minutes and made $2.5 million. And they have this huge community in Discord of 12,000 people who like the Woodies so much that they go to in real life forests on the weekend with their families and they look for fictional Woodies characters. That's how much they like the Woodies. So if you've just sold successfully 10,000 NFTs, what comes next? Most NFT collections, what comes next, if you look at their product roadmaps, is they start to think, well, we'll do a game. So, okay, doing a game, it sounds really good. Actually, it's very expensive. And so what GiveTree's business model is to make it cost-effective and accessible for our partners to go into the metaverse and actually create a sustainable game which can actually generate them an income. So our goal with the game side of things is to help all of our partners, including charities and creators, to create sustainable and profitable games in the metaverse. So that's more our focus for our longer term business model. The transaction fees on the NFT transactions are not where the sustainability comes from. Yeah.
Just a question maybe to all of you.
I noticed that there's a big trend in metaverses, like you've got Decentraland and Sandbox. I'm wondering, the concept of metaverse, is it inherently a singular, or is there multiple? I'm just trying to get my head around that.
I'm sure everyone on the panel will have good opinions on this. My personal opinion is that when we talk about a metaverse, we're talking about something that's very comparable to the evolution of YouTube. So I think what will happen is you'll see in the future lots and lots and lots of different game worlds that you can very quickly and easily jump between and change worlds, and those worlds will have like a dedicated theme and be very similar to YouTube channels, in my opinion.
I agree. I would say there is one metaverse, and within that metaverse, there are different kinds of experiences, being more gamified experience or being more an educational piece. You know, it is really one world, one metaverse, but a different experience.
Kind of like on a similar line, I suppose. Like the idea of a metaverse to me is like kind of just like an high-level alternate reality concept, right? So whatever form that takes. So I don't think a metaverse is necessarily like in a VR or alternate reality. It could also exist in a physical, real-world aspect, such as like old games like live-action roleplay or Dungeons and Dragons. Like I think it's just an alternate reality in which you immerse yourself. As technology moves on, that alternate reality will take different forms. So you know, it moves from live-action roleplay to alternate reality, then to VR, and then you'll have body sensing technology, so you can feel things in the virtual world and the real world too. Take that conversation where you will. I'm not gonna lead you down that track. But yeah, I think in terms of the metaverse, like it's just an alternate reality, and it will take many forms. And as technology moves on, we'll see that change as well.
Definitely evolution. Right now there's like a multi-metaverse of madness right now. Like Facebook's trying to own it, and then they're like, oh, but we're going to integrate with Polygon, with Instagram. So they're trying to make it interoperable. But at the end of the day, you're going to have all these different metaverses happening right now. There'll be some consolidation. But Ethereum is, I guess, the sort of the main thing with Web3 metaverses. At least you can sell your NFT assets and then trade that and buy another Ethereum-based NFT assets in a different world. Whereas if you want to make it interoperable and user-friendly, things like Ready, Play, and Me, in the Web2 context, you can create your avatar, integrate that with a VR chat. Now you can do it on spatial, and then now you can bring it onto eventually Decentraland Sandbox one day, right? And then you can buy NFTs that are avatars of Ready, Play, and Me. And that means that you can take what you own across those different worlds, integrate these Web 2.5 type worlds, but ultimately it's still true to the provenance of the ownership of those avatars. So yeah, eventually all this consolidation, or eventually we go to YouTube eventually at the end, because there were lots of players back in the days, right? It was who got the Backstreet Boy videos first. How do we get that great hit in the virality of these worlds to get that mainstream adoption?
Thank you.
I can speak up like that. So what I've been feeling about it is like 99% of the NFT projects are gonna fail and fail. But what if and the question is to both you guys, is that what is that 1% doing right or would be doing right to actually be around and stay in the future and people be interested in it and actually be making money out of it? That's the goal.
Yeah, so I'll say a very small piece and then pass it on to someone who's actually created a canvas about this for a more elaborate answer. So at least from the Immutable X point of view and what I've seen from a lot of different projects, like you mentioned before, like the art is only like a very, very small percentage of it. Like, I mean, if you look at the Kevin NFT, like, potentially, arguably not the best art in the world. But there's a lot of hype, community building, marketing that really drives that like FOMO and pump. I mean, that's really for PFP projects. But for gaming projects in particular, so So it really is the utility of those NFTs. That's a particular area that I focus on. So a lot of art projects, it's kind of speculative, right? But with gaming, there's an inherent utility in the NFTs. So if you need to use it, for example, like a potion to heal yourself when you're in a fight, you're going to want to buy that NFT of a potion, right? Because you need to heal yourself. So that's what we call an inherent utility, and that gives you value for the NFT, and then you can purchase it from that owner, and then the owner can use it. But yeah, I'll say that piece, and then I'll pass it on to.
Before I would like to answer the question, I would love to understand if the audience knows why people are actually investing and buying NFTs. Because if you understand why they are doing it, you can target it towards whatever needs there are. There's, for example, the short-term flipper, right, who wants to just make money very quickly, long-term investment, but there are those people who are, for example, providing, in-game utility level ups, whatever. Then there is people who are actually after a collectible, where they're, that true fan of superstar XYZ, and they just want, that one-of-a-kind thing. So there are even more of these kind of reasons why people are buying NFTs. So first of all, truly understand that. And as a second step then, decide, well, what is your purpose? Why do you exist? Because if you don't understand why you exist and can't communicate it, in the long run, your project will fail. Because most of your team members won't last long, as remain in your team, as well as the community. So when you have to find kind of your purpose, you can then match it with a utility or multiple utilities. And as I was mentioning beforehand, try to differentiate yourself as well from all the other NFT projects out there. And then, absolutely core is the team, because you want to create an NFT project and invest in an NFT project where you think this team can actually do it and can build it. So usually you need some sort of person who's great at tech, person who's good at marketing, and a person who's good at the strategy and putting things together. So apart from that, it's then creating a great story. People are still, feeling and are deciding things based on what their emotions are. So creating a great story helps also to market it and to, create some buzz. And then on the other hand, you have the assets. They should really reflect what your purpose is, and not just come up with a weird chair if you are for doing something for good or for the environment. And fun. People are in Web3 to have a good time. I feel like all the projects are getting more and more serious, but the community and the people want to have fun. And the basis of the entire NFT monthly canvas is the community. You want to make sure that you build a community as a kind of long-lasting people who are making them your best friends and joining them on your journey, really. And all of this, plus a little bit of luck, also helps to increase the likelihood to succeed. But these are kind of the core principles, keeping in mind the zero cost of revenue to make it a sustainable business model.
I'll take a question. I got a question for Sam.
That's a really good answer. I concur.
Sorry, so my question is, in regards to talking about support for artists and stuff with GiveTree for gaming, and that being the next step, how would you consider making one giant game and each small collective being just a subset, or like a world added onto that? Maybe like a biome, if you think of Minecraft or something like that. Each one is just adding on, expanding the world. So it's like you are creating the new metaverse and it's growing, just like Decentraland with its parcels, but it's more natural.
Yeah, we're big fans. We're basically trying to do, what we're trying to build is a game world that gives you, our partner, everything you need to either build it using what we provide to you, or build it using your own game studio coming in, so that you're not reliant on us as a game studio to build it for you at a cost. So our focus is on building an infrastructure in order for you to be able to create whatever you want. So that would then achieve that outcome of what you just described, where it's like a partner can come in and basically create whatever type of world they like. But I think you have to be quite careful and mindful of like how you design the map initially. You need to be quite careful and mindful of like just how much work is involved in that. It sounds good in theory, and then you start to unpack it, and it's like, wow, that's a lot. And that's what we're doing at the moment, but it's going to be worth it because I agree with your vision. Like, I think that's ultimately like the Ready Player One vision, isn't it? It's like,
that was going to be my next question. Is how many of you guys, how many of the speakers are progressing along, and their vision of the metaverse came from seeing the movie Ready Player One? Any or something like that?
I thought it was quite dystopian, to be honest. It didn't really resonate with me. But I was remember as I mentioned, when I envisioned it, it was like, you know, turning the grey sky, turning it into, you know, sunshine. This is what I envision, and I love it, and not necessarily, you know, being Poland in Europe. It felt kind of dystopian.
Yeah, no, I love the movie. Like, I mean, there was a lot of nostalgia baked in that movie too, which, you know, helps get me 92 with it. Like, if there was a world with all that nostalgia, I'd say I'd be on board. Like, I'd say, yeah, if there was a world where I could, like, just go in and live there for a lot of time, but, like a quote I like to pull out of a movie is like, you know, the real world is still the real world, and, you know, you still have your physical health and your happiness in the real world that you need to think about. So, if one lesson we can learn from Ready Player One I like is, you know, the metaverse is cool, but we still need to remember that there's a real world as well that we also need to enjoy. And I think, at least for me, that was like the biggest lesson that has informed kind of my thinking around metaverse.
Yeah, well, you can't have a good plot without a good dystopian, or but like Ready Player 2, the book is out, and you know, if you haven't read it, the next version is around brain-computer interfaces. So yeah, it's like next level. You think Tesla suit and thick gloves are good. Well, wait till you get Neuralink and, you know, link up to have that full immersive experience in the metaverse. That's what sort of drives the transhumanist stuff, and you know, that's the sort of the world we're looking forward to. Minus the dystopia, hopefully, you know, we can make the real world actually good.
So we're just going to be like brains and some fluid connected to Neuralink, and that's kind of our life now.
Yeah, and eventually, hopefully, we don't need to have that backup. It'll be like multi-tenanted backups, right?
Just shells of brains and fluids connected to the metaverse, right? That's all you need.
Speed of voltage.
I'd like to hear about more about the scaling solution. Thank you. I'd like to hear more about the scaling solution you guys built at Immutable X, and especially what the process was like, the first conception of idea to shipping. Have you guys released this?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't there at like the very beginning of the conceptualization, but I think we worked very closely with Startware to figure out how NFTs were going to work in like the CK rollup way. So if you're not familiar, like the whole CK proof thing is like essentially taking a bunch of transactions that you would have submitted on chain individually, and then calculating like a mathematical proof to figure out, you know, what the result is essentially of like all these thousands of transactions, bundling it up and submitting that on chain, so that you only do a single transaction. It is a large transaction, so the gas fees are quite large for submitting that proof on chain. But that being said, it's still less than submitting 1,000 individual transactions. So from like the Immutable X perspective, like the cost of that like a ZK rollup submission, like a ZK proof submission on chain, so that you have a better experience trading on Immutable with low fees.
Fixed cost, right? Rather than variable cost.
Yeah, I would say it's still variable because it depends, because like the ZK proof, so essentially like it's not always like 1,000 transactions. Sometimes it like varies depending on like network congestion, like batch submission, all of that kind of stuff. So, but what I would say is like it's probably closer than what it would be maybe. Yeah. Cool.
I'm currently driving a smart contract and I'm trying to work out whether I should use ERC 721 or 1155. Do you have any words of advice to get my head around which ones to use?
Yeah, so essentially with like if you ask NFT purists,
yep.
Right? Like ERC 721 is the way to go for absolute like uniqueness. But I guess it's always like a trade-off balancing act, right? So with ERC 1155, like you get semi-fungible tokens support, and it reduces the gas fees as well, which is nice. So I would say probably the best thing is to understand what your community wants and what their values are. Because depending on what their values are, that will probably be your biggest sway if you want to sell out your NFTs.
What impact will Instagram going to Polygon have on other layer 2s? Will there be one layer 2 in the future, or will there still be a multitude?
Yeah. So will there be a multitude of layer 2s? It's still very early to say. I think all of the layer 2s have different trade-offs. So for example, optimism and how they essentially let the transactions go. And if a validator, say, has submitted a fraudulent transaction, then you have a fraud proof that then reverts it. So they will all have their own way of tackling the scaling problem, which not necessarily can be consolidated into one layer 2 because they all have different principles that they want to accept. So where Immutable, for example, stands is that we want it to be like absolutely finalized, I guess, like when it's on chain, so that the user doesn't get some random experience where you buy an NFT and then a day later your NFT is not there and you're like, what the hell happened? Because it's been rolled back. Yeah, exactly. So I think Vitalik's like opinion, like don't quote me on this, but like I think he says like ZK rollups and ZK proofs are the futures.
I didn't say that actually.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. I'm not pulling it out of thin air. Nice. My memory is not that bad.
Another question, both related questions. So the current GameFi type of projects most of them are targeting crypto people. Games like Xing Infinity is not really fun to play, but it's got, if you're early, you got massive earning potential, and they attracted a lot of crypto people who are not really players, but they want to earn. And then there are companies like Immutable. I think I've played Cross Unchained a little bit. I think it's trying to build fun games with an earning potential. You're not guaranteed to earn, but there's a possibility if you play it well, you can earn. However, currently in the gamers world, NFT tend to have a bad rap. They see NFT as a way to grab people's money. So it's got a lot of resistance from the traditional gamer world. Like Immutable, what kind of marketing strategy do they have? Because I think they're targeting the bigger market, which is traditional gamers. But to break into them, it requires some education. And if Immutable is doing it, it's kind of, as a first mover, you're doing the education for the good of other GameFi projects as well. But it's going to be hard to be the first. So what kind of marketing strategy is Immutable adopting?
In terms of what we're doing to try and improve that space, like you said, there's a negative connotation, and apparently that's the reason why Valve is not supporting NFTs in Steam. I think they just want the money, but you know. So essentially with Immutable, we're working with like large game studios, which I guess I can't really disclose, but the matter of fact that because they're large and they produce AAA games, like AAA games take years to build, right? So sometimes it's like 5-10 years to build a game. And they're starting the conversations now about NFTs and how that is going to impact their communities. So the conversations have started, and they've started to look into development and how that's going to impact their like game economies. But I wouldn't expect, say, like a AAA title that you might love, say like Witcher 3 or something like that, to support NFTs in like the next year or like 2 years, because the fact like NFTs fundamentally change the way you think about game economies, because especially if you're thinking about like an online game, right, where there's like markets where you can trade assets. So in traditional games, you don't really have to think too much about inflation and removal of assets from your ecosystem, right? But when you think about Web3 games, especially those Web3 games with like that economic aspect, you have to start thinking now about what happens if a user or player in your game takes the entire asset out of the game, right? What is that going to do to the remaining asset, the prices? Are people going to leave because it's too high and they can't afford it anymore? You know, what's that going to do to your economy, inflation, gamer sentiment? And these large companies have to think about that game design aspect, and it's going to take time to figure that out. So yeah, unfortunately not, I think, in the next year or two, but it's good to know that a lot of the large studios that we're working with are already thinking about it. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you.
Anyone got any questions?
This is again Immutable. I'm really keen to hear what specifically you mean, or strategy-wise, you mean around trying to create liquidity for NFTs. What does that involve? Are we talking about just more marketing for a marketplace, or better tools exposed to new areas to basically create more demand? Is it a demand problem, or is it a supply problem?
Yeah, so the question was essentially like, what strategies are we putting in place to focus on liquidity? In terms of like public stuff we can disclose, you know, like offers, bids, maybe like different chains, like so a lot of things are being explored at the moment, and sort of like the UX aspect of it as well, which I would say like most Web3 projects are not really thinking about UX. And then there's also like marketing and bringing on the mainstream users as well, so supporting things like MoonPay and, you know, like custodial wallets as well to get a lot of the mainstream buyers in. So I'd say we're tackling it from a lot of different angles. And yeah, I can't go into too much detail unfortunately, but it is a huge area of focus for us. Sorry.
All right. Anyone have any other questions? Yeah, do you have any like closing words or anything?
Yeah, thanks again, Nick, for organizing this as well.
Thanks everyone for attending tonight. So if you have any good like projects or maybe any technology or anything you want to share with us, feel free to direct to us. Then we can help you to organize another wonderful meetup like tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.